Who is an attorney and an energy and climate consultant at Bowditch and Dewey. He most recently served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of Energy. So this is a man who has had experience that most of us can only dream about. Vincent also has served as an energy lawyer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and often he's called upon to comment on energy issues in the media, so perhaps he'll look a little familiar to you. It is my pleasure to welcome to Metro West and to Leadership Metro West, Vincent DeVito.
Thank you. Of course, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you for the introduction. But you don't need to dream about my experience, please. My goodness. That would be. I was at a lunch with David Gergen the other day. I'm gonna admit this, but he said something that was funny. He says, when I give presentations, I don't want to go over 40 minutes. He says after, I think it was something like after 15 minutes, half the crowd stops paying attention. After 40 minutes, the rest start having sexual fantasies. Brief comment triggered that. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act is an important part of what happens. And when I give a lot of presentations, and I thought perhaps for this crowd, the best thing to talk about is what's making my phone ring frequently these days, and it just happens to be this topic. I changed it a little bit. There's a lot of information out there. Mass.gov Recovery is a good website. Our firm covers this extensively. We also do a newsletter on this. There's another organization out there, nonprofit network, that covers these types of opportunities. We're a very green firm, of course, so I don't have this ready for handouts, but if you copy down my email or my phone number, I will be sure that you get the copy of this presentation. A little bit more extensive than what I'm going to show today. I actually have a lot of slides to go through because it's all very broad. And the most interesting thing about this is that it does provide opportunity for folks in the sense that it could bring money to your doorstep, it could bring money to your business, it could bring money to your desk. And at another lunch, I was at 2 days ago when the governor spoke, and this kind of builds on what we just heard about the EPA. Sustainability, clean energy technology is the only bright spot right now in the Commonwealth's economy, and in fact the country's economy. It has represented over the last year a 20% growth. So there's true opportunity there, and nothing that should be overlooked. And the reason why there's true opportunity there, it's not an accident. There has been a lot of, beyond this particular stimulus package, there has been a lot of buildup over the years. I have been doing this for just over a decade now. I started out as a lawyer in the state senate here in Massachusetts, and one of the things we did in '97, it was the electric utility restructuring package. An item in that bill was kind of the first cannonball over the bow in the whole climate change discussion, and that was the renewable portfolio standard. Massachusetts was the first one out of the box on that, quickly followed by California, but really it was a model, and it's also for many of the states now, but it was also a model for the framework for a potential national standard as well. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, very briefly, the renewable portfolio standard is a mandate on utilities to use renewable energy, green energy, solar, hydro, now biomass, etc. So, with a lot of early state action came some federal action. After I was on Beacon Hill, I went down to Washington, D.C. at the Department of Energy, and we had the National Energy Plan in 2001. We worked on, there was an Energy Policy Act of 2003. There was another one in 2005. All of that in the midst, of course, you remember that earlier this decade there were the California blackouts. There was the blackout in the Midwest and the Northeast. We did a national transmission grid study as well. So all of kind of building. And when I talk to folks and I try and help people extract business opportunities out of federal and state legislation to other corporate lawyer work, and what the question I get is, what's new in this stimulus package? And the most interesting thing that I can say about that, there's really nothing new, but there are all these programs out there that have received a huge cash infusion. So the opportunity really is now, and some of these programs are temporary. For instance, the Department of Energy's Loan Guarantee Program. What has happened there? Now that's a program that's 4 years old, but the President has put $6 billion into it to help banks give money to not only new innovative technologies, but also commercially viable technology, which is an expansion of that program. So it's for solar, it's for wind, and items such as that, but also remove a lot of the barriers to entry. A lot of these government programs remind me of an old cartoon, I don't know what it was, but it was like fill out these forms and triplicate, please. And it was just nothing that was necessarily truly effective. So a lot of the barriers to entry in terms of who's going to pay the upfront cost, well, now the answer is the government. Who's going to fill out, a 1,000-page application? The answer is nobody, because it's all been reduced. So, as I mentioned, this is all very good stuff, but the opportunity is limited because these all do have timelines. They all do have hard stops to them in terms of when the projects need to start, and in terms of when the opportunity to take advantage of these cash infused programs ends. So, one of the other things I would like to mention also is, what does somebody like me do? Because I think it's of interest, since I spent a lot of time in government, and now I'm in the private sector, and how do I help folks such as yourselves and others? And it essentially boils down to this. There's investors out there, there's innovators, there are enterprises, and then there are kind of these big corporate folks. And depending on where you fall in on that, I'll briefly outline how folks like us can be helpful in sharing the wealth of knowledge. The interesting thing about my perspective and why this is so much fun for me is that, as I mentioned, I'm working on this for a while, but I've worked on it at the state level. I've worked on it on the regional with the New England and the New York independent system operators on the grid level. I worked on it federally, and I've also worked on it internationally on some of the regulatory harmonization. We mentioned earlier about the Energy Star program. One of the items that I worked on, and just to prove that government can actually do some good when it gets together with other governments, was the harmonization of standards between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico for energy appliances. And that was a big feat, especially in working with Mexico. But essentially, one of the things that the North American Energy Working Group is tasked with doing is to reduce the redundancies both on the regulatory side when it comes to energy trade on the border, but also when it comes to credentialing, such as working with labs, and there's essentially a reciprocity there. But investors, are looking primarily to buy things, to simplify it. And one of the things, they need help with is the due diligence of the acquisition targets. Innovators right now are very big in this Recovery and Reinvestment Act because innovators want to develop and do new things, and so there's government loans, there's grants, the guarantees I already talked about. The existing enterprises tend to want finance. And they're actually, this is my experience on the finance side. The big banks are not active in this sector right now because they have larger concerns in terms of their own structure and future. However, I would look, and this is based on experience now, at the smaller regional or community banks. Some of these banks are billion-dollar banks, and they're quite healthy because they have operated purely based on the fundamentals. And when you base any business on the